Honorable Speaker, on the issue of compensation, the ministry has no funds to compensate the affected families. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Keter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, while I acknowledge the response by the chairperson, I wish to know that there is one particular case I singled out in my request that has not been mentioned at all. The case of a Form 2 student, Mr. Emmanuel Kipkoech Rono, who was killed by a police at Kiptagich in Kuresoi South, Nakuru County. This is a very unfortunate incident. The loss of such innocent young person should concern us. The Cabinet Secretary and the IG of Police should provide detailed information on this killing as a matter of urgency. On the issue of compensation, government should the duty of government is to protect life. Where cases like this happen, morally and legally, the government should take responsibility and compensate the victims. Thank you.
Anything, does the chair wish to say anything? To suggest part of the wish list? Just put your, I don't know more, put your intervention button.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I want to concur with Honorable Gideon that there may have been an oversight on the actual details of the death of Emmanuel Rono, which I promise when I'm bringing the statement, which was sought by Honorable Eric Matiang'i, I can include that one.
Very well.
Thank you.
Honorable Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and with humility, I did not really want to intervene, but I realized that when the statement was being answered, there's a statement with finality that the government does not have money to compensate the victims. And you remember the sentimental and emotional way the two boys were buried. I thought even the owner of the statement should have interrogated further so that a window is opened. Yes, if that particular department is not having money for compensation, but what other ways, window, is there for such a compensation? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I imagine that, just imagine that the window available would be the judicial process. Because it's only through that one may, because government may even come up with some proposals for compensating families or relatives of those that may have been killed, but maybe the quantum may not be sufficient until maybe there's a judicial pronouncement on that, or perhaps maybe, but I don't know whether the ministry considers that. It's something that needs to be maybe perhaps the ministry could think of it. Honorable Pukose, you want to say something on that?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the chair for responding. Listening to the response, Honorable Speaker, and I was actually thinking on the judicial process of appeal, but when you look at many of the families, they are not able to afford the legal fees because more often you need a lawyer to be able to take up this matter. And we have an independent police oversight authority. Unfortunately, I think the independent police oversight authority, I think we need as a house to look at the law that operationalize it, because more often we've raised similar cases and ask the IPOA to come and do investigations. But after they have done the investigations, they are not able to deliver anything. And you wonder whether IPOA is just in that office, people are just enjoying salary and they are ineffective. So some of those bodies like IPOA, I know maybe in the BBI something was being looked into the IPOA, but I think IPOA maybe it might need to be one of those bodies that is not effective and needs to be, as a house, we do away with it and create a mechanism for which people can seek redress in these matters. Because for the time IPOA has been there, I don't think they have achieved anything. So for me, I think we should be able to examine the law that created IPOA so that something can be done about it. It's very frustrating. I have appealed to IPOA, they come there, and they are not able to, they cannot be able to deliver anything. They are ineffective. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Maybe they are not the only ones. There are several, I think, several other commissions which all you see is just seminars, workshops, then some. The rest is just fuel guzzlers hovering all over here, carrying this chairperson, this one or the other, commissioner of this, commissioner of the other, and then budget time comes. Remember, the Constitution itself places an obligation on the National Assembly to fund them. So you not deny them funding. The member for Tharaka wishes to weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I agree that the avenue available to the aggrieved parents and parties is through the judicial process. But what is of great worry to this House and to the piling up unsatisfied judgments against the government, and as we speak today, we are just about to reach 1 trillion of such amounts. So in as much as we are advising these aggrieved parties and families to go to court and get judgments, it is almost certain that those judgments will not be satisfied and they'll just be paper judgments, paper decrees, and nothing more. I think we need to find a way of ensuring that the government has sufficient funds to satisfy all judgments and to do it in a manner that is fair and just and equitable, and not to selectively choose which judgment to satisfy against other judgments. So really, this is not of any help to these families unless there is a clear policy on the satisfaction of judgments against the government.
And as a senior member of the Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, I think you should seek to know how many judgments are there, how many decrees have been issued against government and have not been settled or have not been, the owners haven't been enjoyed, and then try to look at them historically so that when you come to budgeting, then you can also priority say that this was decreed 20 years ago, because I'm aware that there are some which are very old. They have not been satisfied. There are others which were done just a few months ago and they have been sorted out. So the criteria used to settle is also questionable. But because you, in terms of Article 95, you are the ones who exercise oversight over all those state organs, including the office of the Attorney General and the Attorney General himself as a state officer. You, as the National Assembly, exercise oversight authority over them, and also you commence the process of removing them from those offices. So please, you have the power, but if you don't exercise it, people, Kenyans will not even know actually you have, many Kenyans don't know that you have that power. That actually you can come and decree that this judgment is 30 years old. Because it belongs to some unknown Kenyan out there, they languish in misery. Nobody to turn to. Yet, this is the House with the power and mandate to resort to the kazi kwenu. Honorable Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To a large extent, the persons will be found guilty, they'll be jailed, or whatever happens to them. Quite often, there's actually need for another process to start for actually seeking compensation for the government. So I think that is where really the weakness is. And even when judgment is given, and normally you would the officers during the budget process. So as you just rightly said, we're leaving our people open while there are actually ways that we can enforce through this house to make sure that people get compensation when they are aggrieved. Many people just give and say, if it is against the government, I don't waste my time. Even if I get compensation, nobody will pay me. And you know, I think by law, it's not even very possible to go and attach government property.
Yes.
That's another way we should look, that actually we should allow people to attach government property if they're not paying just like anybody else. So I think this is an area that they can help and even bring legislation and that can help people in these matters. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Maybe because, yeah, the Honorable Nikal says it, there's a law called the Government Proceedings Act. Now, perhaps we'll get a few people in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee to weigh in. Even as I challenged the committee to also give us a report on the Waqf bill. Honorable Sankok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And I also have a different opinion, Honorable Speaker. Because we have insurance to all officers and government officers who get injured in the line of duty. What about if also we have an insurance cover paid by the government in case a police officer injure a citizen or destroy properties of the citizen, so that at least we can also have them covered? Honorable Speaker, you are the third in command and you can only go to second or first. When you become one of them, please assist us in making sure that we have an insurance cover to all those citizens who may have been maimed, by police brutality and such, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. We really need that insurance cover.
To need some legal anchor, which in terms of Article 94 can only be done by Parliament. So either way, it is you, members of Parliament, particularly actually in the...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few matters emerged from the Department on Security, the statement. Straight away, I would say we would interact with the Attorney General urgently, but I want to remind the House that the Attorney General is just a conduit. The funding for compensation goes to the principal ministries, in this case, the Office of the President. So he will not be able to carry per case to him. He doesn't let the funds stay with him. As soon as they are brought to him, they are disbursed immediately. What could happen, and I have been I have had experience in this matter of compensation as a lawyer. Some people, there is some favoritism in the OP that you get some cases, skip the others. So actually the Attorney General has no say on these matters, but we will deal with this matter. We will interact with the Attorney General, remind him about the concern of the House. The second matter I would like to address would, there is a matter that was mentioned about IPOA. I think the cure to this malaise of IPOA just looking as a white elephant is that some of these prosecutorial matter, jurisdiction should be given to those bodies, particularly IPOA, to prosecute matters that are specifically arising from police misconduct. Right? But this would, of course, need registration. My committee also will look into this. What I found a bit fallacious is when my colleague here spoke about, in his statement, he says the police all the time act within the law. I found that a bit atrocious, particularly when I watched a case, I think 2 days, it's been going on repeatedly in the media, about 2 young people or children who died in Nakuru. The police have already issued statements saying the father poisoned. These children were poisoned by the father, right? They have no evidence to this effect. Yeah? Any stranger would come and do that and leave medicine around. Right? So some of these things, some of these matters are preempted by the police. Right? The evidence that was emerging is that the doctor himself has agreed to know from his own, from the people who know him, that he loves his children and he's not of this type of fellow to execute such a horrendous act. I'm told he has already died. So some of these things, misfortune, from that is a misconduct. And if you look around, I'm trying to research on the number of people who have been killed by the police in the last 1 year. It is a daily occurrence. So when that statement talks about the police acting within the law, it is absolutely laughable in Kenya. We're looking at what is happening in Kayole, what is happening in Huruma, what is happening in Dadola, everyday demonstrations against police stations. Because of people, we see this person has been killed. And every time they say, no, he is not killed by the police. So I think we need to relook. The Committee on Security and my committee should perhaps join forces to see what legislation do we need to effect to give the EPOA jurisdiction to prosecute matters concerning police specifically. Just like we used to have, SSF, we used to have prosecutorial matter jurisdiction, even immigration. Up to today, immigration has some nature of prosecutorial jurisdiction. So we'll deal with this. You raise a matter of WAF. I think I will not come to it now, but I had already requested the leader of majority to study it down because my committee has not come up. Unfortunately, it has not come up with its own report. Particularly, we need to interact with the public trustee, with the public.
There have been members who have been following what is the fate of this bill. Because it's a 2019 bill, particularly the Muslim fraternity, so those who profess the Muslim faith now know it is not the House Business Committee that is sitting on the bill, but after 2 weeks, the bill will find its way into the order paper. What is out of order? Honorable Raso, what is your point of order? I wanted us to finish with this, the matter to which the Honorable Mwadi was responding before we come to the others. I know, Honorable Mili, you have an issue. I've acceded to it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wanted to actually speak to both. The Waqf bill is almost going to the third year. And what has not been done over 3 years, I am afraid if 2 weeks will actually be enough for it to be finalized. But I think with your wisdom, they may manage those 2 weeks if they didn't manage 3 years. But on the issue that was raised by Honorable Keter, listening to the chair responding to that question, I was a bit disappointed because on the face of it, actually the response was very thin. The issue of the 2 young men who were gunned down in Embu actually tickled the national psyche in this country. That two young men who could just have been arrested, given a cash bail of 1,000 to appear in court or in police station, could just disappear and later on to be found in mortuaries. Honorable Speaker, the issue of compensation, as you rightly said, sometimes we as this House, we may not be doing the right things to assist this country. If you followed the issue of George Floyd, the American who was killed by the policeman, actually the state said, since the police are servants of the state said the family will be compensated. And I think if issues are in the public domain, captured on TV and even on the media, then we cannot run away to say that the state cannot compensate. There are issues, we must differentiate issues, really. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
On this one, let me hear now from the Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo before the chair responds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue that was raised and responded to by the chair is actually not a light matter. Some of us remember, and some of us do not remember, that less than 3.5 years ago, we were in that situation where, because of political affiliations, many of those who support our side of the divide lost their lives, indeed over 50. Mr. Speaker, the matter is actually was taken up in court and it is still pending. The problem with the judicial avenue, first, is one of, I wish the chair could listen, and Honorable Millie Odhiambo. The judicial remedy is not really ideal for this. First, because of time. The time it takes to get to the bottom of such a matter judicially is way beyond what justice demands. Secondly is cost. It is very expensive to prosecute a matter of this nature. Thirdly is the fact, Mr. Speaker, as you've observed, that even after you get judgment, that judgment will pend for years. There are judgments that have now been pending for 4 decades. And lastly is because whether you get judgment or not, as Speaker, you observed, there's an express injunction against executing against government. So you will get that judgment, you will sit on it until one day, if Jesus comes back and the government has sympathy on you before you are taken, then you might be paid. So it's not a good avenue. It is true, Mr. Speaker, that there are other avenues that can be considered. There are avenues including going to the Kenya Human Rights Commission, going to the Office of the Ombudsman, and many people have taken those avenues because they are cheaper, they are faster, and you might get results. I think, Mr. Speaker, that what needs to be considered here is a scheme alongside what we have in terms of wildlife. When death is caused or injury is caused by the wildlife, there's a scheme of compensation under the Act. It is not sufficient, but it's a good beginning. So if we were to have a scheme that parallels that, in which wherever there's such injuries, at least there could be a starting point, it could perhaps help us a little bit. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have heard many people complain on this. Part of the problem is that there are many policemen who believe that if they injure you or even cause death, as long as they are not prosecuted and jailed, nothing will happen to them. Because if you are to sue, you will sue the state. If you are to be paid, you'll be paid by the state. So there's no personal loss. Until we bring that element of personal loss, then the restraint on the part of the police will not be there. But lastly, Mr. Speaker, as I've heard many people complain about some of the constitutional commissions and independent offices, it is true they have varying levels of success. I was myself there, and it is not for me to judge. But, Mr. Speaker, the truth is that we should introspect in this House. Because all these bodies, the persons who go to them pass through this House. We debate who is to be the chair. We debate who is to be a commissioner, who is to hold what independent office. But the tragedy is, most times when that debate comes, we don't debate objectively. We either debate from the prism of the party, or the prism of the tribe, or the prism of gender, or the prism of the profession, and therefore we stifle getting the best of what we can. We must be prepared to live with the fact that we can only do as well as we do here. If they are not working properly, then we need to re-examine how we appoint them through this house. I am one who believes that most of these offices are very important in a properly working democracy if they are presided over by the right people. But until we agree to get the right people, then we must also take some share of the blame.
Justice and legal affairs, because these matters of culpability and taking responsibility, they are matters that I think the committee should spearhead some legislative proposals to try and address them. Look at the police, is it called the Police Act? And see what, because it's not just right that people go and do whatever they choose, because they know they were under the cover of government. I think these are matters that, in fullness of time, I think the committee should initiate some moves. Sorry, I see the Honorable Kaunya wanted to say something before the chairman speaks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make two comments. One, regarding the statement by Honorable Kose on the performance of IPOA. It's true, as alluded by a number of members, that some of these independent bodies